Good afternoon and welcome back if you were here this morning, and welcome if you just arrived for the afternoon session. I'm very pleased to introduce Peter Schiffer, Yale's Vice Provost for Research, who will give us a few thoughts this afternoon on the topic of data and data science. Peter is also a professor of applied physics and physics here at Yale. He's a member of the American Physical Society. He's chair of the Division of Material Physics of the Society and past chair of the topical group on magnetism and its applications. And if you don't know what that's about, talk to me later. I'm sure I can explain it. Probably not. But so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Peter Schiffer.
All right, thank you, Jill. So it is a genuine pleasure to be here and to kick off the afternoon. And I just want to express, first of all, my gratitude to everybody who has participated in the organization of the event and putting this together, and all the speakers and the panel members. This is really important for Yale, and I'm so glad that folks are helping put it together and participating. Yale is in the midst of making a big push in science and engineering. It's an academic priority, and we are gearing up to make it a reality. This comes from President Salovey's charge to us, and it comes from a sense of responsibility that Yale, as one of the great scholarly institutions on the planet, has a responsibility to contribute in science and engineering. And there's a sense of that from around campus, sense of that from our leadership, and we're in the midst of doing it. And the manifestation of that has been a long process, a couple-year process of strategic planning. There was a wonderful committee put together by the president and provost, led by Scott Strobel, that issued a very long report, 90-odd pages. I'm sure all of you have read it in detail, every one of you. It actually is it's a really, really good report. And it identified several areas, priority areas for increased investment in the sciences and engineering, several cross-cutting themes, and several organizational and structural improvements that we should be making. And the reason I mention it, not just because it's important to Yale as an institution, but also in this venue, data science, the structures that support the use of data are prioritized in that report more than anything else. Data support is prioritized as an organizational need. The computational resources to handle large data sets and to analyze data are prioritized. The management of data are prioritized. And data science, the fundamental mathematics behind how we analyze data, are prioritized. That's actually the first among the top priority areas slated for additional investment. Data are incredibly important, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I just want to emphasize that just like everything else in society, research is being transformed by the availability of massive sets of data. It's different from research that was conducted 10, 20, 30 years ago in the sense of the quantity of data that's available, the fidelity of the data to reality, and the computational resources that we have at our hands that allow us to analyze the data. It's a different world for research, and that goes across the full spectrum of the scholarly enterprise, from the arts and humanities, the social sciences, which you'll hear from my colleague Alan Gerber in a minute, to all of the natural sciences and engineering. Every single field is being impacted by the ability to collect or gather or acquire large data sets and then analyze them. And that's wonderful. It allows us to do things that we couldn't have dreamed of doing 10, 20, 30 years ago. But it comes with a responsibility, because the people, federal government, foundations, corporations that give us money that allows us to do our research, they know that we can use data now, and so they have higher expectations. They have expectations that will use it, but also expectations that will handle the data appropriately, all the privacy concerns and the use concerns when it's proprietary data, and that will manage it appropriately. And this is something that universities are learning how to do, is when we not just bring in data to use, but we create our own data, where do we put it? And how do we store it? And the old model, which I was raised in, where the PhD student would hand a hard drive to the advisor upon graduating and then wave goodbye, and the hard drive would sit on the advisor's shelf until the advisor moved offices and then couldn't figure out what it was and threw it in the trash. That model is no longer acceptable, it turns out. So coming up with the mechanisms to handle the data that we create is going to be part of what we do, as well as having the ability to bring in data sets and use other people's data responsibly. And there's a lot of effort around that and a lot of very high expectations from the government and other funders for how we do that. Fortunately, at Yale, we have tremendous resources to help researchers with that. Sitting right in front of me and being in this building, the library is first and foremost among those, but also the Yale Center for Research Computing, ITS, and the administrative offices that help us deal with our sponsors, Office of Sponsored Research, the Office of Cooperative Research, on and on and on. We have lots of support here. And with the science priorities, we're just going to have to be building and building on that support. And it's going to be the responsibility of each one of us involved in the research enterprise to think about how we acquire data, how we use the data, and for the data we create, what happens to it when we're done and where it goes, and to make sure that's in line with best practices. So with that, let me say again, thank you. Thank you to everybody who helped put this day together. Thank you to those of you who are here for the afternoon and to all the speakers. And I'm unfortunately not going to be able to stick around for the whole afternoon, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what I can. Please enjoy and do great things with data. Thank you.